yes. Welcome again to your Daily Huddle. We're talking today about your emotions as a gateway to your spiritual maturity, continuing our series of other gateways to your spiritual maturity. And the theme, of course, is taking each piece of the things that you think are not gateways to your spiritual maturity or are in the way of your spiritual maturity and having you reframe them so that you can alchemize your relationship to those particular things and use them as a pathway to your spiritual maturity and not as a distraction or an obstacle. And we've talked about food, we've talked about your body, etc. Today we're talking about your emotions. And this ought to be a reprise for those of you that are interested in continuing your little emotional temper tantrums, darling. You can actually use them to alchemize your inner childhood wounds, your mother wounds, your father wounds, et cetera, et cetera. You can actually use your emotions as fuel towards your maturity as opposed to fertilizer for something else. So let's talk about it. You probably have heard of a book called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. He's famous for popularizing Stoicism precepts. And I'm going to use that twist, that reframe that he has popularized. He didn't come up with it, but he did popularize it. That the answer is in the question. Okay, we're going to take that assumption that the answer is in the question. And when you hear the word, when you look at the word emotion, I want you to notice two things there. First, the word motion. And secondly, the prefix E, which in Latin, E or X is like away from, right? So emotion is you expelling, another X word, expelling motion out of your body and into the world, which is why it shows up as external demonstrations such as aggression or tears or a raised voice that you're projecting outward, et cetera, et cetera. So there's some physical external demonstration of what's going on inside you, and that's what emotion is, okay? The difference between an emotion and a feeling is that a feeling generates introspection. It's inward. And it doesn't require any kind of, or it doesn't exhort, we're just doing X words today, any outward representation of it, right? You could have a feeling and just really be internal with it. So the only time I want you to notice culturally, because you cannot talk about your spiritual maturity or your spiritual unfoldment without taking into consideration the context and the systems in which you exist. Then it doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? And so I want you to notice that the emotions that are typically looked down upon or that people feel like they have to hide or apologize for are typically the ones that are not culturally acceptable in their particular culture. There are cultures where if somebody passes away, for example, it is expected that you feel sad and grieving about it. So they don't make a fuss about you crying at somebody's coffin or, setting them on a pyre in certain Middle Eastern traditions, setting them on a pyre and setting the body on fire, et cetera, to cremate them, and then expelling that emotion out of your body and into the actual ceremony, et cetera. That's actually very well accepted. And in fact, if you didn't do it, they'd look at you like, don't you care? Isn't this important to you, right? They expect emotion. In this patriarchal, misogynistic, cis white driven culture, I want you to notice, like as a lab scientist, okay, put your little white lab coat on, not the gavel of judgment or indictment, okay? I want you to put your white lab coat on of curiosity and exploration. And I want you to notice that when in this patriarchal, capitalistic, misogynistic, racist society, Usually the emotions that are looked down upon are the ones that have to do with self-advocacy or that interrupt the the acceptable image that we want to portray to the rest of the community. So if something makes you quote unquote look weak, don't do that. If something makes you look quote unquote needy, don't do that. If something makes you look quote unquote like a diva, another iteration of needy, don't do that. Right? Laura says, in some African cultures, crying is important for releasing collective grief. Absolutely. And I don't know that we have wanted to, except maybe in this little micro community of the daily huddlers, but we have not wanted to admit to ourselves that when we suppress our emotions, it's a little bit like sitting in the water under having a balloon under you, and then expecting that you're just gonna float on, float on. Like this thing isn't just gonna pop up out of somewhere and hit you in the head or something, right? And so I want you to notice what are the emotions as you go through your day, what are the emotions that you have that you typically don't want to have, that you typically don't want to demonstrate. I promise you, if you really, really think about it, they have to do with either self-advocacy or an image conversation. When you advocate for your needs, when you advocate for your boundaries, when you advocate for fairness, et cetera, that might come off as anger. That might come off as, just, what is the word I'm looking for? Assertiveness, right? And for some people, particularly
aggression.
Yeah, it
Yes.
doesn't have to be aggression. It could just be assertiveness, right? And that's the
Right.
other thing, that sometimes we conflate assertiveness with aggression if we're not used to that coming from a certain group of people. So we'll say assertiveness if it's a male, if it's a female, oh, she's just angry, right? And so I'm asking you, especially here as we're talking about spiritual unfolding, that we get to be rigorous and educated and curious and explore some of the ways in which we express our own human nature and how we observe human nature being expressed around us so that we can have the proper distinctions and nuances of it. Because when we don't, we fall into the trap of judging, suppressing, justifying, eliminating, and saying, oh, I don't do drama, so you throw people away. No, what you don't do is be uncomfortable with your triggers. And then you're making that person the problem. Let's be honest, right? So come on in. That's what we're doing today. We are confronting our crap. The water is fine. You won't drown. And emotions are typically located in the water element of your body, right? And so that's one of the reasons why we say, for example, I had a gut feeling. I felt it in my gut. My gut told me, da da da. Your gut isn't speaking to you, child. Not with words. It's speaking to you with sensations. It's speaking to you with emotion. And you either heed it and observe it or not, right? Florence, you have your hand up? Where's Florence? Where'd she go?
Yes, this is
Hi.
timely for me. This is very, very timely because just last night I was dealing with that. There was an interaction between myself and someone, and I realized that I have been like it got me really irritated. But then I after hours of maybe I didn't even realize how irritated I was. But then I realized, oh, this is a trigger. This interaction between myself and this person, this whatever happened it's triggering me, and it really triggered me. And so it's like this thing about confronting this just few minutes, like before I got here, I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? Like I was blaming the person. I was really upset. I'm like, you're making me feel guilty and da 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 and all of that. And then I'm coming to this place of, well, what is this bringing up for me? Yeah. And how can I just breathe and deal with this? So I'm just open to the conversation.
Awesome.
As to how I'm moving forward in that relationship. But now I've accepted that it's not the person, this situation is just triggering to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to find out what is triggering, why or what's this trigger, and deal with the trigger.
Oh, girl, it's like you read my notes for today. You just segued right on in, moseyed right on into the next point. Thank you so much,
Thank
Florence,
you.
for the win. Because I want to give you a tool to make sure that you can process this either with the person, or it doesn't have to be with the person. Sometimes the person doesn't have tools. You got to do it yourself, or you got to do it with a trusted friend, or whatever the case may be. If you are not yet on my daily huddler list, this is one of the resources. And for those of you that are there, you're going to see it later on this afternoon. This is one of the resources that I'm making available to you, is a Grace Talk framework that you can take yourself through. It's going to be it's part of your journal, but every other week or so, I'm giving you like an update to that journal, kind of like how we had Windows 95 and we had Windows 98. And so it's getting updated that way, right? So the Grace Talk framework is something that I created out of reading a lot of communication frameworks that were already in the ethers. So like the nonviolent communication framework, up-level communication, fierce conversations, crucial conversations, et cetera, et cetera. And so there was something always missing in those pieces that I saw out there in the marketplace. And that is that it didn't have a place to alchemize and neutralize emotions. It was like, go do that dirty work by yourself. And when you're ready, we can have a conversation. And I was like, that's not how that works. Because when you go off and do something and you're not properly soothed, you're going to come back here with your little passive aggressive hints and your pullitas, as they say in Spanish. And that's just going to create more volatility and more distance in the relationship. We want to create intimacy and collaboration. So I created the Grace Talk framework to give you a place where you can actually dump that stuff, not have it be weaponized against you, or not have it soil and infect the relationship. And it can actually be a co-creative process that you can alchemize those emotions and those triggers, et cetera, to then move from a place of neutrality into collaboration and creating a new possibility, a new agreement with the person that you're in relationship with. I'm wondering if you're curious about that. You curious? Okay. So the first, GRACE is an acronym. Laura, does that really need that? Okay, I got you. The first letter is of the acronym is G, and it's really about airing out the grievance, right? When you are airing out the grievance, the first thing that you do is ask for consent. Why do we do that? Because every time that we are going to engage in a revelatory, intimate act, it is important to have, it's rape, it's coercion, right? So in the same way that we ask for consent or look for hints of consent when we're about to engage in a physically intimate act, I want you to ask for consent when it is an emotionally intimate act, okay? So here's the way to ask for consent when you are about to get your grievance out. I know that this is my ego speaking. Why do you want to make that distinction? Because a lot of times when you get angry and you throw a tantrum, people are like, oh, that's how you really feel? No, that's how my inner child feels. This is how my ego feels. This is the stuff that's in the way from what I really feel. But I just need to get it out so I can get to the business of my highest good and your highest good. So can we do that, please? Right? So you want to identify who's actually speaking so that you can put it in its proper perspective. I realize this is my ego speaking, but I have been triggered and you've done nothing wrong. Everybody's doing the best that they can. That also helps to drop down the walls of defensiveness. Because how many of us brace for impact when somebody says, I need to talk to you, right? It's like, uh-oh, what did I do wrong now, right? So when you say, this is just my ego speaking, nobody's done anything wrong, I have a grievance, I have a trigger, I have a blah, 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 then you actually like laying it out because I need to talk. It's too vague, child. You need about what and to whom, right? And then grade yourself. It's subjective and it can change from moment to moment, but if you're triggered at a level 10, you are way more explosive than if you're triggered at a level 4, for example, right? So people can kind of manage energetically, because I may not have the bandwidth to hear your shit, excuse my French, when you're at a level 10. I'm dealing with, somebody died and the ceiling fell in the kitchen and the blah, 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 and I may not have the bandwidth. So that's why you ask for consent. That's why you establish who's talking. That's why you, indemnify other people so that you can handle your own stuff just using them as a witness. So by using that person as a witness, it could be the person you have beef with, or it could be a trusted friend. It might be no one, who knows, right? It depends on, each situation is different. But depending on the witness, they now know that all they have to do is witness. They don't have to tit for tat. They don't have to, yeah, but what about what you did? Yes, but justify. Yes, but explain. Yes, but defend. Yes, but deflect. None of that, just witness. So imagine that you feel nauseous and you ask a friend to go with you to the bathroom so that you can vomit. And then they hold you up, well, not anymore because I don't have any more hair back there, but over here, they hold your hair and they make sure that you don't soil your shirt, and you bend over and you let it hurl. Can you imagine that your trusted friend starts picking stuff up from the toilet and be like, what, when did you eat corn? What was this? Right? Nobody does that when you're physically vomiting. So set the stage so that you can emotionally vomit without, one, getting crap on them, and two, them using their crap on you. Oh, your crap on you, right? This is all making sense, right? Okay. So once you let it rip, and for some people, it's useful to set a timer. I'm going to talk about this for 5 minutes, right? So pace yourself, right? Or I'm only going to do a minute, or we don't have much, whatever, right? You do this based on the circumstance. Each circumstance is different, but you do it until you're finished. If you don't have time right now and you're still not finished, set up another time to talk. Set up another journal entry. Set up another voice memo, whatever the case may be, because the point of airing out the grievance is to get you to a level 0 from wherever you started, whether it was a level 10 or a level 4 or whatever. It's to get you to a level 0, because you will not be able to look at this with spiritual wisdom if your ego is still in the way. You will not, let me say it again, you will not be able to look at this with spiritual wisdom if your ego is still in the way. This is like somebody comes to your house and you have a dog. The dog is just going to keep barking until you handle the dog. Otherwise, it's going to start jumping and sniffing and licking and just doing stuff. And you're like, Fido, get out of the way. You're going to have to address the dog or say, okay, I got you. I see you, right? Until the dog goes away, you give him a toy and he is interested in something else. Same thing with the ego. The ego is not going to go away until you soothe it, okay? So how do you soothe the ego? There are 7 ways to do that, which is another acronym, mind you. And that acronym is RESTORE, RESTORE. I'm just going to give you what they are. I'm not going to go into them. You have to go into my list in order to get that addendum to the journal that you're going to get for free. The way to do that is monikahogando.com/daily-huddle. /daily-huddle. Can somebody please put that on the chat so that you can just click it? Monikah Ogando, you know what? I'll do it. monikahogando.com/daily-huddle. So sign up there, and I'll make sure to send you the Grace Talk framework so that you can spend some time with it and answer the journal prompts, because it's all in the journal. So the RESTORE acronym is repeat back. Right? Sometimes one of the ways to soothe the ego is they want to hear what you said so that they know you heard them. Repeat back. Empathy, that you know where they're coming from because you expressed or have gone through a similar experience. The S is for simulation, and the simulation is like you can simulate an apology. You can simulate being contrite and just, taking yourself over the coals. Think of it like a role play. It's not real. You're not addressing the real. You're addressing the ego. So it could be a simulation. And some people do that, right? Some people are like, I'm not apologizing. I did nothing wrong. Child, we're talking to an inner child being wounded. When the child says, look what I made, it's a flower. It doesn't look like a flower. It looks like a disheartened circle with some crap around it. You're like, oh my God, that's a beautiful flower. Do you mean that? No. But you do that anyway because you're soothing the ego. Come on. Stay focused on the objective here. The objective is to soothe the ego. So, simulation. pretend, role play, etc. And the person will tell you, okay, the whole point of the restore mechanism is, how can I support you? Okay, so when you say, I need you to repeat back what I just said to me, okay, then you repeat back what you just heard. Or if they say, I need a simulation, okay, what do you want me to simulate? I want you to simulate an apology. Okay, great. What kind of apology? What do you want me to apologize for? I want you to apologize for hurting my feelings. I want you to apologize for being neglectful. I want you to apologize for, okay, great. I'm so sorry. Da, da, da. And you just go up to the simulation, because that's the way to support the ego. Get it? Okay. So then the T in restore is touch. It could be holding hands. It could be holding the face. It could be a hug. Depending if I teach this in corporate environments, and sometimes those things are not appropriate. HR is side-eyeing me. So you want to do something that is appropriate for the environment and the relationship that you have, okay? Don't be hugging people that don't like to be hugged. That's why we ask, how can I support you? Because you always want the onus of authority to transmute and alchemize this thing to be at the hands of the person who's actually doing the grief, right? Where are we? O is open-ended questions. So you can ask open-ended questions to clarify their come from, to clarify what actually, to your point, Florence, what was the actual trigger? What are you actually upset about? And let me make sure that you're understanding that this isn't just about words, but it's also the energy coming from. Because you know the difference between, so tell me, what are you really angry about? Versus, so what are you really angry about? You know the difference. Same words, same person saying them, same person hearing them, completely different conversation, right? So we're gonna keep our energy neutral because we don't want to re-trigger the ego. The point is to soothe the ego, not escalate the problem, okay? So we went to open the questions. Then the next R is reassurance. Sometimes you may be triggered because you gave your best and you still didn't get the promotion, and you're bitching and moaning and airing out the grievance with a coworker. And maybe the support that your ego needs is, you have every right to be angry. Those people don't know what the heck they're talking about. You deserve that promotion, da, 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 and that level of reassurance, okay? And then the last E in restore is emotional intensity. Emotional intensity is matching where that person is. Sometimes they're not expressing themselves the way you know, just like you know the difference between what actually triggered you and what actually triggered you. You know the difference energetically. You also know the difference between them airing out the grievance in a very polite, I really feel murderous rage, but I don't have any sharp objects near me. You know that difference between that and them actually having that, right? So the emotional intensity, one of the reasons why that's supportive is because people really feel seen when they're doing their best to be polite and contained, and you're over there like, because that's what they're feeling. And they're like, oh, you get it. Then now I don't have to stress myself out. I don't have to raise my blood pressure. You understand where I'm coming from, right? So emotional intensity can also be very healing. The whole point of going through those support points is so that you can ask, as the witness to this vent, to this grievance, where are you now? You know, I started out at a level 9 and now I'm like at a 2. Oh, okay. Well, what else do you need so that I can support you and get you to a level 0? Now, the temptation is to have the other person jump through hoops as a power play to, now you do me, you soothe me, you're responsible for my healing. No, we're not doing it. If you genuinely are like, I still feel some, there's still some grit in there. Okay, what else do you need? What else do you need? I don't have to do a goddamn thing except be here and witness you. Okay, I'm here to support you. This is your trigger. This is your grievance. You're in charge. Tell me what you need. Okay. I know you didn't expect the Spiritual Matters Thursday to say GD. I get it. But we're talking about grievances. Okay. So if they say, well, I think I need more, blah, 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 they'll give you another one of those 7. Maybe they said empathy and now they want reassurance. Maybe they said open-ended questions and now they want emotional intensity. Whatever the case may be. The point is, we're going to go through this until you get to a 0. Because when we get to a 0, then we're available for the next step, which is the R in grace, which is access the root. Dig up the root. Where did this come from? The only thing that has a trigger is an already existing weapon. The trigger didn't come out of nowhere. Okay? The trigger is just pressing a button that was already there. So where did this come from? Where's the root? Where did you first experience this? Maybe this is not the first time that you felt taken advantage of or disrespected or overlooked, etc. So when you can find the root, you can release the person that pressed the trigger because you have disarmed the weapon. Isn't it amazing, you guys? We're saving marriages up in here, okay? So, and jobs, child, please don't go shoot up the place. So when you access the root, then you can be empathetic. Then you can be nurturing and pay attention to the inner child who perhaps never got to say their say, never got to be heard. Mom and dad were like, oh, go to your room. You know, I don't know if you ever grew up in a household where it was like, if you're having any kind of emotional expression, it was like, nobody wanted to see that. Go somewhere else. So you learned that when you're feeling a big emotion, you need to self-isolate. You learn that when you're stressed, when you're disappointed, when you're angry, when you're mad, when you feel bored, when you're neglected, et cetera, you go somewhere else. You withdraw, you isolate. Because you grew up in a household where nobody wanted to see those tears, nobody wanted to see that anger, nobody wanted to see you stomping around. And don't you dare slam that door. The child, that's a butt whipping on GP just for slamming the door. If you raise your voice, if you make any kind of noise. So some of you are seething over there, and your heart is this close to a heart attack or some kind of cardiac event because you haven't learned how to alchemize your emotions. We're here to do that. We're here to help you do that. So once you access the root, then you can create some accountability about that. Oh, I see how I created this experience, not the circumstance. Traffic is going to do what traffic does. People are going to say and do what people are going to say and do. You have no control over what's external to you, but you do have control over how you experience it. So I experienced you being late as being disrespectful because I had this trigger that means when my dad was late and picking me up from school or dropping me off somewhere, I just felt really disrespected. But I couldn't say, Dad, you're disrespecting me when you're 4. As though 4-year-olds are not entitled to their feelings. Right? Yes, I'll do that in a minute, Robin. I'll repeat the letters in grace. So you learn to get some accountability around how did I create this? Some of you, when you're meeting a friend for coffee and you see that they're running late, you won't call them just to see if they're going to call you. Are they going to be respectful? Are they going to be thoughtful? Or am I going to be right that people are just taking my time for granted? Tell the truth. You know you do that. You set people up to disappoint you with your unspoken expectations and so forth. And then you can be right about people aren't there for you. And I always do for people and they never do for me. And so you can be right about your self-righteousness, right? So accountability is you owning that, you saying that to yourself or to that trusted friend who's your witness, right? So that's the A. The C in grace is to come to a new agreement, create a new agreement. So that agreement could be when you're late, I want you to text me. Or if you're late after 10 minutes, I just will drop the Zoom, right? So, or whatever, right? You just come to an agreement. If you cheat, again, we're going to open the marriage and then I'll start dating other people. Whoa, not so fast there, buddy, right? And then the E is to execute on that agreement. So you have G, air the grievance, R, access the root or dig up the root, A, define your accountability, C, come to an agreement, and E, execute on that agreement. That's the grace talk. So you can see that you can do all of this with yourself by yourself. You actually don't need a witness, but it is powerful to create a grace talk with another person. It deepens your intimacy, it deepens your vulnerability, it deepens your respect for yourself so that you can vocalize the way that you couldn't or wouldn't when you were 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, when you were a teenager, when you were in college, when you were a younger adult, et cetera, et cetera. So you're healing a lot of generational wounding that didn't even happen to other generations, that happened to you, right? In another decade of your life. This is you honoring you and honoring your ancestors and your decedents, because now you're leading by example. one of the greatest compliments that my daughter paid me recently, actually, was there was one time she called me in the middle of me having a little breakdown. I was in tears, and I was not gonna be like, okay, hello. I wasn't gonna do that. I was like, you listen, where you brought it, that's what's happening, right? So she called me in the middle of me having this breakdown. I'm just like, hi. She's like, what happened? I was like, you really want to know? Yes, I'm stressed because blah, 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 blah. Ask for consent, right? And all of that. So she said to me, you know, Mom, I really appreciate that you let me see your humanity, because a lot of times I think you have no problems and you just handle everything so perfectly. And I was just supposed to lead this like pristine example. I'm glad to see that you sometimes screw the pooch. And I was like, thank you, I guess. Right? But I think sometimes because we are in this Western capitalistic society, we think everything's supposed to be perfect and clean and edited and clinical and and we forget that our greatest power is in our self disclosure, in our vulnerability, in our ability to accept all the pieces of our humanity. Your humanity does not disqualify your divinity, and your divinity doesn't exempt you from your humanity. So if we can just accept them both and walk them both, because you are a dual being, this is a dual reality. Right? So don't forget, go to monikahogando.com/daily-huddle so that you can sign up for this list for the Spiritual Matters Thursday. And as a bonus, as a gift, I'm gifting you this journal that we're building together in the summer series. And so the latest edition is going to have the rundown of the Grace Talk, the summary, and it's going to have some questions as prompts so that you can process and take yourself through an example. Maybe something has been bothering you and you want to take it through the Grace Talk framework so that you can alchemize that one. And then when you get some confidence about you, then we can do another one. Okay? Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I so appreciate you. Lauren says you cuss and rant and rage as much as you like. Yeah, child, you let it rip. Listen, don't catch yourself when you're vomiting on the toilet, right? Don't be editing the chunks that you're going to be puking. Just let it rip. That's the other part about a Grace Talk, that when you create this container, you don't have to edit yourself. You can curse, you can insult people, you can just let it rip. How dare you, MFGC, blah, blah, blah. All the acronyms that you can think of, put them in this acronym so that they're not poisonous, so that they don't leak and bleed over your relationships. Put them here so we can flush them down the toilet together. And then you can walk away cleaner and more available for intimacy and collaboration. So thank you so much for your presence here. And remember, of course, all of our tenets: love generously, even through your positivity, especially through your positivity. Give of yourself, your energy, your time, your attention. Drink at least 7 to 8 ounces of water. I just added that. It's very present in my mind. I'm perched right now. Eat more plant-based food. Sleep at least 7 to 8 hours. Twerk, exercise more. Remember that twerking is a spiritual practice designed to raise your Kundalini energy all the way up your spine. Okay. And of course, check yourself
before you wreck yourself.
You got it. Always audit your assumptions. Thank you, everybody, for being here. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you
Hey,
so
Doc.
much, Dr. Ogando.
You're welcome.
Have a great day. One love.